Let's bring in Gabrielle. She's a former Navy pilot and a Fox News contributor, a correspondent, I should say. Also, Paul Viollis. He is the host of the Security Brief and CEO of Viollis Group International. Thank you both for being with us. All right, Leah, it seems impossible to me that if something does explode in the air, that there wouldn't be any debris on the water, or that radar wouldn't pick up on some of the debris at least.
Well, you know, it depends on what type of radar you're talking about. You know, a ship's surface radar might pick up on pieces of debris. It depends on the accuracy of the radar and what type of a radar you're talking about. The radar that would be looking at the aircraft as it's flying and being passed off through airspace would probably be looking at like a larger piece of metal in the sky, put it that way. And an airplane basically exploding into little pieces, it might disappear off the radar there, or all of a sudden kind of drop really fast. But this new information about it potentially dropping, we will be getting more of this.
Right. Especially sunlight. It's light. It's, you know, daytime there now. So
and I want to tell you one thing. When I was deployed, we actually lost a pilot. He crashed. While we were deployed, we never found anything but an oil slick. Now, that was an F-18 that went down. In fact, no, I'm sorry, I don't think we even found an oil slick in that particular case. So it is possible for planes to essentially disappear. I don't think that that's what's going to happen here. I think we're going to see some debris.
Just early.
Yeah,
it's just really early.
On Sky News, their contributor, Chris McGee, says this. They are told two circumstances that would prevent a pilot from contacting air traffic control. One, there would be human intervention, and the second is something has occurred on the flight deck, that they're told you just handle the plane, and the last thing you do is pick up the phone.
Absolutely. You know, you'll hear this again and again. You aviate, you navigate, then you communicate, meaning you fly the airplane, keep it from crashing is what aviate means in that situation. Navigate, meaning, you know, where you're pointing it at. And then the last thing you do is you talk to people. You worry about what's happening in your cockpit first. But there's another scenario that could have happened, and that's also if you've lost your communications, if you've lost your ability to communicate. That
because with two pilots, one could be communicating while the other one's trying to fly the plane.
Right. But, you know, in this type of scenario, if there is something major happening in the cockpit, you're not going to be worried about talking unless people on the ground can help you. You know, if you're going to land the plane in the water, think Captain Sully, well, in the Mediterranean, you're going to want to give a call to let people know where it's going down. But if it's catastrophic, no time for that.
Sure. Paul, apparently according to European media, a merchant captain saw something in the sky about the time and said it looked like a flame in the sky. So at least one eyewitness, although the Greek defense minister says that the plane fell 20,000 feet, spun sharply, then disappeared. It sounds to many like a bomb, given the fact that the security at Charles de Gaulle Airport is pretty tight, but also given the fact that the plane made 5 earlier stops in the day. You got to look at every one of those airports that plane was at in the last couple of days, don't you?
Yeah, there's no question about that, Steve. I mean, when you take a look at the access control to that aircraft and how many people actually have access, we talked about this earlier during the break, we have to take a look at ourselves and just how vulnerable we are here in the United States for something like that. The more touches and feels to that aircraft, the more people on the tarmac, the greater the vulnerability. There's no question about that.
The baggage guys, the catering guys.
Absolutely.
The gasser.
Yeah, and we know that's a problem here. We get that. We're just not doing the right thing about it.
I mean, the Egyptian airline, after they had the problem with the plane that blew up, they found out they had a bunch of ISIS people on staff, and we had to let them go.
Right.
So let's
that makes sense.
Yeah, you know the big story in America before this happened and even today is the size of the TSA, the lines, the missed flights. The airlines are complaining. TSA says we don't have the money. What would privatizing, which they're talking about now, do to that entire process?
You know, Brian, that's really the most poignant question of all. And when we take a look at privatization, we're going to look at a much more efficiently run organization and people that are held accountable. The other part of it, and we've talked about this before, that concerns me, is the union involvement with respect to TSA and the lack of efficiency that's being instilled in people in lieu of more efficiency.
Why do you say privatize? What's the benefit for all of us?
Well, it's cost beneficial for us. We're going to spend less money. We're going to get better people. The KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities of the people, Ansley, that we'll bring in will be greater than it is today. I mean, look, I'm not denigrating the TSA staff, but at the end of the day, we have to take a look at where they're from, what their background is, and did you leave flipping burgers yesterday and now you're checking, IDs at the airport? I mean, that concerns me.
Because the problem is, every time there's a liquid plot, we can't bring water on. There's a shoe plot, we got to take our shoes off.
Yep.
So we're always reacting.
Right. When is that going to stop? When are we going to get ahead of the curve instead of behind it?
You also have to look at some recent incidents that have happened. In April of 2014, there was a stowaway on an airplane from California to Hawaii where someone got in the wheel well. That's, you know, U.S. flight. Another stowaway, June 2015, wheel well of a aircraft from Johannesburg to London. So you have to look at the security on the tarmac, what the perimeter is like around where these aircraft are. When you think they're in a safe place, are there holes in the fences? Are there security cameras? Who's watching those cameras? Lots of places for error.
Absolutely, and the best part about that is, and this begs the question, are we conducting good, solid vulnerability assessments at our airports today and holding people accountable to the access? And the answer to that is, we're not.
Yeah.
You said during the commercial break, excuse me, Steve, you said during the commercial break that we're next.
Yes, no question.
Why?
The way that we look at this, and anybody that specializes in counterterror will tell you the same thing. These are called vulnerability tests. They're hand-picking and cherry-picking certain markets where they know they got a high probability of success, and they are going to iron out the wrinkles. We saw here, Ansley, in the United States, and you know this better than I do, we saw here in the United States prior to 9/11 that Al-Qaeda cherry-picked airports to see where we were weak.
Sure.
It's a simple vulnerability test. They're called pen testing. That's what they're doing now, and that's exactly what we're going to see coming here.
You know, the problem, though, Paul, you know, with the headlines about these hundreds of people in the TSA line, what happened in Brussels? It was before the TSA line.
Right.
If you've got hundreds of people out at the airport in Chicago, near the street, all those people are vulnerable. That's a big problem.
They don't have to get on the plane.
No, they don't have to get on the plane. And when we start taking a look at what happens here that we're looking at here, it kind of begs the question, was there ordnance on that plane? And if so, how did it get
Apparently no cargo.
Excuse me?
There was no cargo, and apparently nothing hazardous, they said.
Allegedly.
That's what they said.
Allegedly.
Don't forget that if an airplane blows up in the sky, it could be something internal to the plane or something external. And there are a lot of militaries in that region. It's a hostile environment. You know, you've got Russia over in Tartus. You've got the Egyptian military, which has been threatened by extremist activity. You've got the U.S. Navy. You've got the Greek Navy. You have a lot of military activity, naval assets that have the ability to miscalculate.
They got missiles.
Yeah, they could shoot down our
they have
plane.
surface-to-air
And remember the
missiles,
TWA
absolutely.
flight right off Long Island? That was an electrical problem. They finally found out. That happened on the inside, and it blew up, and everyone thought that was a missile.
Well, because people saw a streak in the sky just before it
There's
exploded.
so many scenarios. Bottom line, we don't know at this
We
point.
don't know.
We don't. I mean, the jury's still out at this point, but we will find out.
All right. Paul Viollis and Leah Gabrielle, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.